For too long, we've lived in a world of canceled and delayed. No more. Those plans you've been making, they're on, thanks to OnGo, the #1 ranked at-home rapid COVID-19 test. So that vacation where you get to swim with the pigs, it's on. Your friend's wedding that was pushed back 4 times, it's on. The roar of the stadium, it's on too. OnGo, COVID-19 test results in minutes. OnGo is available at letsongo.com/radio and Amazon. This product has been authorized by the FDA during the public health emergency only, and only for the detection of proteins from SARS-CoV-2, not other viruses. The claim #1 ranked is supported by ECRI's usability evaluation conducted in December 2021.
Hey, bud.
What's up?
What else? What? Nothing else.
Well.
Wow. Welcome to Public Access America. My name is Jason. I'm the one with egg on my face this week. You know, I was listening to our episode Thursday, and the first thing I said was, I don't want to talk about Russia. Russia is going to be what it's going to be.
Well.
And a week later, I feel like I got to boot up my ass. A big, giant communist boot up my ass.
It's time now for something positive.
We might be headed to the promised land of speaking the truth and finding our external liberty once we internally liberate ourselves.
Problem can only be solved when there is a kind of coalition of conscience.
Because that is how it works. This is the beginning, it is not the finale, and that's why we're here, and that's why we rally.
We've got to be that creative minority.
Find a way to get in the way. I got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble.
Frankly, I know we've got to do something.
Yeah, I think that's just it. You know, this is a really unfortunate situation, and you know, I know we go into every week kind of like, we'll just talk about whatever comes up. Well, sometimes you get something that comes up so big that you're just not ignoring it. You can't.
The thing is we have a listenership audience in Russia. Like, I know a lot of rural Russia doesn't get internet access, but St. Petersburg, Moscow, a lot of those people get our podcast. They have access to it. And if we have a chance of flying under a radar that CNN and MSNBC can't, then I'm happy to give that a try. What I did was I took Volodimir Zelensky's speech to the Russian people and I made that a TikTok and I asked people to share it because I just think it's that important that the Russian people get a little bit of perspective here, because this is a giant moment in the access of democracy and communism. And I'm just going to let you talk about it initially.
Oh, you know, this is one of those things, like, you know how often I've said, you know, governments just need to leave each other the fuck alone. And this is one of those things where I hate saying I'm right. And the reason I hate saying I'm right is because, you know, you and I both know the people of these various countries, hell, even in our own country, nobody wants to go to war. Nobody thinks that's fucking cool. Or nobody thinks that's going to be, you know, a walk in the park. We all, like, especially, you know, as Americans, in the last 20 years, we either know people or we know people who've lost somebody in a war.
There's a segment of our population that really is like war horny. You know what I mean? They want to play war. They want to imitate war, but they don't really know what war is. I think Ukraine is changing that. When you see scenes of houses, gas stations, freeways that look exactly like ours, and you see people that look exactly like us stopping tanks, that brings it home in a way that I don't think anybody intended.
Right. And that's just it, is like, you know, I have to give my kudos to the Russian people who've gone out to protest and say, stop this, you know, stop the war, no war, because, you know, they don't live in a society like ours where, you know, I get to, you know, I could go out and, you know, stand out in front of my local capital and demand that there's no war, say, fuck the governor, fuck the president, things like that.
Right.
And nothing's going to happen. I mean, there might be some supporters on the other side who try to rouse some shit, but the government's not going to do anything. I'm not going to jail for saying fuck the president or fuck the government. I'm not going to jail for protesting the war. It's one of those things where, I really do wish more societies had that right. And, watching people who are quite literally just standing there holding up signs get arrested, that really should drive it home for a lot of people why you don't want to limit protests, at least here in this country.
Well, the same freedom that gives Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson their voices are the same ones that give us our counterpoint abilities.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's a freedom that we definitely do have that communists definitely don't. And I keep thinking of Tucker Carlson, the one communist of record, one of two communists on record right now, him and Trump, that he would not have the ability to question his country if we had communist rule. And I think about Donald Trump saying, doesn't that look wonderful? Those peacekeepers, we need that on our border. And I keep thinking, that's the America Donald Trump wants for New York and Chicago and LA and Seattle. That's what he wants. That's Donald Trump's fever dream, is a police state like that. And him coming out and being so blatant on it is forcing Republicans to go the other way. Thank God.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been some Republicans here that their responses have somewhat surprised me.
Me too.
Tommy Tuberville, for example. I wasn't expecting that one. That was one of
Mitt Romney going on CNN and saying cozying up to Putin is close to treasonous. Fuck yeah. And that, yes, Donald Trump stopping javelins to Ukraine is affecting them now. And we're seeing what his effects are having, I like that Republicans are doing that.
Absolutely. And at the same time, too, we've watched as, finally some of our friends have managed to get arms and ammunition to Ukraine. And so for the Ukrainian people, that's paying off. And, all of this could have been avoided. That's the tough part in this, is that, yeah, Ukraine wanted to join NATO, but NATO wasn't exactly interested in having Ukraine. That was the thing. 27
members were. Hungary and I can't remember the other countries that were opposed to it at the time, but it's a unanimous thing. 30 countries have to agree to it, and so that's what they were waiting for. Just like when we wanted to pass equal rights amendment, 37 states had to agree to it. You need a consensus in a community to do these things, and that's the problem with what's going on with NATO. It's a slower process, like the UN. It's full of roadblocks that people are using to get their way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's where this all gets really interesting, because all of this could have been avoided. It really could have. Without a NATO treaty, there weren't going to be any American troops in Ukraine.
Right.
And even if there were a NATO treaty, the American government hasn't exactly been thrilled about sending more troops. In fact, we had pulled a lot of our troops saying, look, you guys need to learn how to defend yourselves. I mean, you guys have the capabilities, but, we can't be the one that's supplying forces everywhere. And right around that time, we're pulling troops back home. We're pulling them away. Putin goes and does this, and now we're forced to send a lot of those troops back into all these other countries that we had just pulled them out of.
Yeah, I don't want to try and guess what Putin was thinking, but I think he thought his 20-year plan was about to die because Donald Trump wasn't going to get reelected and he wasn't going to be able to do it covertly, and so he just had to do this overtly. Why he had to do it is an interesting thing to me, because when you think about Putin, he's not coming from a position of strength. What he's coming from is like a devastated economy that bases 45 to 55% of it on a pipeline. Like somebody once said that Russia is a gas station posing as a country. And the truth is so and this is important, there's monarchs and then there's autocrats, kleptocrats. Kleptocrat is an autocrat that siphons money out of a country into his own financial gains. And so Russia could prosper if there wasn't so much money being siphoned out of the country. If he put it back into the country, but he doesn't invest in infrastructure, he pulls all the profits out for a yacht. And so they can't find oil. They need Shell to come in. They need Exxon to come in and find their oil from them. They can't dig it. They can't process it properly. They're using old stuff to do it because they don't invest in this stuff. And so the Russian people, the communist idea is that everybody works for the glory of the government. And if the communist government could be prospering right now, but he's stolen all of those profits. And so now what he's left with is nothing, no resources. And I kind of think he wants to invade Ukraine for the resources, for the wheat, for that stuff, so he can prop up his economy in a different direction and diversify instead of investing the money he's taking into diversification.
Yep. No, and that's definitely an absolutely I would say a true statement in that regard. Because when you look at, it's not even just the farming economy, it's also the fact that Ukraine has a ton of minerals. They have a ton of fissionable materials.
Right.
Ukraine has a huge uranium source, and Ukraine has a huge titanium source. That's something that's very important. So the reality is that when it comes to all the resources that Ukraine has, Russia had, basically Ukraine's sources were developed, to the point of being easily accessible. Russia refuses to do that with their own stuff. So,
and they have the land mass to do it. That's my point.
Absolutely.
They could easily plant wheat fields if Putin just invested in tractors, but he'd rather have his lap pools on his yacht. And that's the point we need to drive home. Why did America go into Afghanistan? Minerals, right? Like, to a big point, it was the resources. It wasn't to extend democracy to a place. It was because it was profitable. We were making more than we were spending there. But then when that became obvious that it was for minerals and not human rights, we got out.
Right. And that's the thing is like, our access to minerals there became questionable. And I mean, let's be real honest about that. And at the same time, too, we started to recognize the signs that, the only reason that we were keeping that access available was because we were keeping troops in the country. And if we were going to ever get ourselves out of the country, we either had to have a government there that could fight like the Ukrainians are, or B, we just had to give up and say, look, this is untenable. And that's pretty much what happened. We were looking at, Obama was looking at pulling out of Afghanistan 10 years ago. And didn't do it. And Trump said he was going to do it, and it didn't. The motion started, but it didn't come to fruition until after he was out of office.
Right. He did it at the end of his term to cause chaos for Biden. And bravo. I mean, congratulations to Biden for handling this the way he has.
Yeah, I mean, everybody I know that talked to said no matter what, Afghanistan was going to be a shit show. I mean, Ukraine's also kind of a shit show right now. But, I would say that, when you look at how Ukraine has handled themselves up against an advancing force, that, it's a much different story, because Ukraine's fighting for their own homeland and they're fighting to keep away from, being under Russian rule again.
Right.
It's been pretty amazing to see the amount of fight that they have in them, and it's something that we have talked about, multiple times, especially, me being a gun owner and everything like that, with the Ukrainian government handing out weapons to whoever wants to stay and fight. For our American audience, and I would, for all other audiences around the world, the reason we have the Second Amendment is basically the scenario that's happening in Ukraine right now.
Right.
This is the exact scenario. Why Americans are allowed to keep and bear arms. Now,
to form a militia. It isn't to have some horn dog shooting contest, shooting people everywhere on the streets, or mass shootings and killings in schools. That's not what the Second Amendment was for. It was to protect each other, not to kill each other.
Exactly. And that is a realization that a lot of people I've seen are finally starting to understand it. It's now, I mean, when you look at the American position, where we're at, is Canada going to do anything to us? No. Is Mexico going to do anything to us? No. Like, realistically, the only country out there that has the ability to, let's say, do something like what's happening in Ukraine would be China. And China's not going to do that because that'll completely fuck up their economy. They have no desire to do that.
And that's a great point, because China is actually what Russia could be, right? Mm-hmm. Because she isn't siphoning out the profits, he's investing it, and he's actually borrowing against his potential to create a better society. I mean, I do not like his humanitarian views, right? But you have to say, as far as a leader leading a country, taking out 30% of his atrocities, taking out that and looking at him as a ruler investing in his country, that's what communism's supposed to be, and I see Xi saying, go ahead and invade Ukraine because I really like the resources I have just off to the west. I kind of want a little of Russia for myself, and if I can just work my way in there, you're going to lose a lot of land because Putin's going to fall and Xi's going to capitalize on that.
Oh, I guarantee you that, most likely, somebody will try and capitalize on Russia falling. Yeah. And the thing is that it's not going to be the US. That's the real honest truth, because we don't have any desire to try and go in there and make that happen. We have, we did that whole issue of, having a system of allies go in and fight a war, and then have to divide up a country in order to, quote unquote, administer the peacekeeping of that country. Right. And that was a shit show. And there's absolutely zero appetite to do that.
And people will fight that. The people will fight that. I mean, that's what we did in South America, right? Little puppet regimes all over the place. It doesn't work. The people don't like it.
Right. And that's one of the things is that, when you look at how the West handled situations like Japan and Germany after, the Second World War, we had these fights of, well, what system of government is going to be the best? And the answer was legitimately that, we dumped a bunch of money into, places like South Korea. We dumped a bunch of money into places like Japan and Germany for them to become, the systems that they are. But overwhelmingly, what ended up happening was we allowed them to adopt their own dreams as well.
That's right.
And Japan and Germany are, I would not say, are anything close to a puppet of America in any way, shape, or form. In fact, a lot of the times the things that we want to do, they flat out tell us no.
Right.
And we're like, all right, well, okay.
And democracy, and we've had a lot of failures with that too, right? We've invested in countries and it's just totally tanked. But there's democracy springing up around here in the Dominican Republic and other places like around our hemisphere, and democracy is still thriving. And I think what I think about Ukraine is like, it's this stage. It's like, it's where communism, the best of communism meets the best of democracy for a head-to-head contest on who's better, right? And that was the stage. And I think Putin just kind of flipped the chessboard and went, I don't want to play anymore.
Well, I mean, he did flat out put his nuclear arsenal on alert because he's the illegitimate Western sanctions. It's like, the thing is that if you got the fuck out of Ukraine, we would probably be willing to talk about reversing those sanctions.
Right.
And that's the reality is that you can call them illegitimate all you want, but we're not the ones with fucking troops, bombing schools and fucking, civilian living blocks in another country right now, I should say.
Like he didn't even give them a chance to evacuate women and children. He was just like, no, we're not going to invade. No.
The heinous part is having a meeting with the UN saying that the Russian government isn't going to invade Ukraine while they are literally invading Ukraine. Like that right there is probably the most heinous thing that I have seen. And it's absolutely aberrant. It's
right.
There is no excuses. There's no reasons. And unfortunately, I think that you're going to see the Russian government lose a lot of its pull on the international stage because of it.
Right.
And rightfully so. I mean, you've got China who is, not helping the Russians out. I mean, they're still, throwing their blame at us for a number of things, but they're also telling Russia that they have to respect Ukraine's sovereignty.
Right.
And they are not helping them, avoid sanctions. They've hindered their ability to borrow based on commodities.
Mm-hmm.
They've hindered their ability to transfer money. So, I mean, China has done its own thing to, basically keep the Russians in check. And it's one part. It's one part, trying to appease. I wouldn't say appease the U.S. and the Western side of the country, because, they have a lot of they do have a lot of market in other countries, in Western countries, and they don't want to lose that market. But at the same time, too, I can also see where for China it's a power play to show the Russians, look, you don't have the pull you once had, so you need to stop acting like you do.
Right. You have an economy the size of Texas on a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I imagine that when Putin went to the Olympics, he told Xi this was going to happen. And for some reason, I see Xi just saying, no, like, we're not supporting this. But I see two steps away from Russia saying, we have no choice but then to deal with only China, and China saying, why would we pay you for the resources that are on land that we can take from you? I really see that happening in 2 or 3 steps. In 10 years, China could just take half of, because Russia, they can't protect their east side. You know what I mean? Is it their east side? Yeah, their east side.
Yeah, their eastern side.
So I just see China taking it. Like, those are ours. It was Chinese land originally. So I don't see why they wouldn't just say, hey, you want to form your Soviet Union. We want our empire back too,
And that's, I think, the dangerous part about this is that, when it comes down to it, it's like you have a bunch of people who ain't exactly acting like friends. They ain't exactly acting like enemies. And, they're just a bunch of sharks waiting until they can smell blood in the water.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going to happen, unfortunately. This is going to be tough for, I would say, a lot of Western democracies, in that you're going to watch Ukraine either win this fight and take out enough troops that Moscow somehow decides this is not tenable, or what's going to happen is you're going to see something like somebody's going to get trigger happy with something they shouldn't, and that's going to leave the United States no choice but to get involved, and that you don't want to do.
Right. I mean, Russia took hold of Chernobyl. Why? Why would they fight so hard to take over Chernobyl? That's scary to me. Moving nukes into Belarus and putting your nuclear armory on high demand. I wanted to start this episode with the phrase nuclear blackmail, because that is a scary ass thought. That's when I started taking this like him seriously. Like, I see the war in Ukraine as devastating, but when he said, stay out of it or I'll nuke you, that to me a line that we all had to take serious.
Well, to me, it was a line we had to take serious, but at that point, I still thought he had his faculties about him enough to not fucking do that.
Right.
But today, now that he has put Russia's nuclear forces on high alert, like that is really disconcerting, because even though the United States has some of the most advanced nuclear weapons in the world, the idea of us using them is like the furthest thing from our brains, but this move by Russia, I guarantee you, is going to leave us no choice but to advance to DEFCON 2, which basically means, we're teetering on a precipice. And
Right.
For those who don't know, DEFCON 1, so we have 5 through 1, 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest, 1 meaning nukes are either detonating or they're on the way. And so DEFCON 2 basically means, like, even for us now, we have to put our nuclear systems on alert. And I'm not saying that we've done that yet. I don't know if we have or not. Easily could look it up though, because they do put that information out.
Oh yeah, they have the doomsday clock, right? 2 minutes. To midnight.
The doomsday clock is done by another organization. I'll look up DEFCON status right now and see if we have.
But so a nuclear, Russia and Russia have a nuclear triad, which means we have land, sea, and air nuclear capabilities. And Russia and Trump eliminated the intermediate range nuclear treaty that we had with them. And so Russia has been able to design intermediate range missiles. They tried doing a hypersonic missile that just circled the Earth with a nuclear warhead on it, and that crashed into the ocean. So we do know that they were designing this stuff. So it's real possible that a Russian submarine could be off the coast of Alaska right now, or off the coast of Maine, or Florida, or Seattle. I
mean, it's always possible, and that's the thing about it is that we never know exactly, what could happen, and it's really hard to say. The United States definitely does not want anything to do with any sort of nuclear, exposure. It's not
right.
It's not what we want, and it's very disconcerting that we even have to think about it.
And what's weird is now we all know what Donald Trump looked like from the other perspective, like not here, somewhere else, right? Because Putin is doing this sweaty, jerky sort of lying. He knows he's lying. He knows that we're telling everybody exactly how he's lying. He doesn't seem to notice, I don't think he understands that the world is in this 21st century form of media where everybody sees everything all the time, and he thinks he's pulling the wool over our eyes because he has a bunch of people around him saying, yeah, you're being so sly, like Mike Pompeo saying he's very shrewd. I don't know how shrewd he's being right now. I almost feel like he has a form of rabies. You know what I mean? It's early onset rabies was my initial thought.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find that another way here later. But
yeah.
The reality is that we were at DEFCON 3. I know that much. Whether or not we've moved up to DEFCON 2 after that, to give you an idea, the only time that the United States has moved up to DEFCON 2 was when the Soviet Union put nuclear missiles in Cuba.
Yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And you think about that. That was a time where, the United States had more advanced nuclear missiles. Mm-hmm. And were able to deliver strikes to the Soviet Union, but the Russians had to be a lot closer in order to do that. And so that was one of those things where, for them, they showed their hand that they couldn't hit us unless they were right off our coast.
Right.
But we could hit them from, essentially across the world. Now, both sides could do that. That's not hard for either side to do. And this should all worry anybody.
Yeah,
I am somebody who firmly believes that nuclear weapons were the biggest mistake of humanity. The idea that, well, if we can't have it, then we're just going to glass half the planet is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah,
that's not okay. If your idea of winning a fight is to render the planet uninhabitable, then you really need to reevaluate your position as a human being, because we can disagree, we can fight conventional wars, but at the end of the day, you still have to respect humanity and humanity that is not going to be involved in a nuclear showdown.
Right.
And those are the people that we need to be thinking about, and we need to respect, because they are going to experience the fallout of all-out nuclear war, and that's not okay.
And since Reagan, there's been an attempt to get to nuclear zero, and it wasn't until nothing stopped until Putin got into power, and then it was accelerated when Trump started another nuclear Cold War by modernizing our nukes, which caused Russia to modernize their nukes, which started this whole process to where we are right now, where people, in the 1950s, when they came up with this nuclear stuff, we played with things like nuclear hand grenades and bazookas, and we realized that isn't safe. So we got rid of that. We went to Russia and we went, no, right? And Russia was like sane enough to be like, no, we don't want to make nuclear hand grenades,
Exactly. Like, we had nuclear torpedoes, nuclear hand grenades, nuclear, like I remember they were even experimenting with nuclear bullets, like for conventional rifles. So the idea was like, okay, I may not be able to kill you, but I can give you radiation sickness. And it's like, okay, Jesus Christ, what the fuck?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so there was sanity to this. And I think there should be a specific force for when somebody says, I'm going to nuke you, to where we go and arrest whoever it is on the planet at the time. You know what I mean? That's dangerous as fuck. That should never be a threat that comes out of anybody's mouth unless they want to be North Korean.
For too long, we've lived in a world of canceled and delayed. No more. Those plans you've been making, they're on, thanks to OnGo, the #1 ranked at-home rapid COVID-19 test. So that vacation where you get to swim with the pigs, it's on. Your friend's wedding that was pushed back 4 times, it's on. The roar of the stadium, it's on too. OnGo, COVID-19 test results in minutes. OnGo is available at letsongo.com/radio and Amazon. This product has been authorized by the FDA during the public health emergency only, and only for the detection of proteins from SARS-CoV-2, not other viruses. The claim #1 ranked is supported by ECRI's usability evaluation conducted in December 2021.
Well, and I have to give kudos to Mikhail Gorbachev for coming out, and saying, after his, rule of the Soviet Union, saying that, nuclear weapons are the biggest threat to the planet and nobody should have them.
Right.
Like, I couldn't agree more in that regard. I don't believe anybody should have nuclear weapons. And I mean, it's a fever dream, because you have a number of countries who will not give them up, and I really wish that they would all consider it.
Yeah,
because that's a dangerous game to play, and it's only going to take one madman who has enough of a sycophant following that they'll be like, yeah, fuck it, we're going to hit that button. Luckily, in the past, it's for Americans and the Soviets, there were people behind the scenes that were like, no, we don't want to do this. This is a terrible decision. And we've had that back channel communication to stop that from happening. And my hope is that we have more of that. We need more of that. We need more people that are willing to step up and say, fucking no, calm the fuck down. This isn't
right.
Okay.
That's what I'm wondering. Is there anybody behind the scenes in Russia that would stop him? I would imagine there has to be somebody.
I guarantee you there probably is. And my hope is that this person has the bravery to walk this back off of a ledge.
Yeah.
And I say that as somebody who, I truly want peace for the Ukrainian people. I truly want peace for the Russian people. And I want peace for everybody. I want people to just be able to live their lives and not have to worry about who the fuck's going to invade their country and who the fuck's going to kill them and or nuke them. There is no reason to let it progress that far.
The world wasn't made for 10 assholes. You know what I mean? Right. Vladimir Putin doesn't get to scare the entire planet. That's not fair. Like, Viktor Orban doesn't have the permission to just fuck with the entire planet. Like, Kim in North Korea. These guys don't have the right to just say it's so, like
Right.
I believe that people have I don't care, North Korea, be North Korea, but open your border and let people out if they want to be out. Let people in if they want to be in, and then go with that. If you believe North Korea's government is the best, do it. If you believe communism is the best, go to Russia. But, and if you believe it here, like if you're Tucker Carlson and you want to, expose communism to the light of day, go ahead and do that. We'll make up our decision. In America, you can say what you want. I honestly think that Fox News has Tucker on because they're trying to break into the Russian market, kind of like Facebook and Apple and Google are trying to do. And I think Fox just puts a communist on 1 hour a day so that he gets on their TV, and then they can start running the state-owned TV. That's what I feel about Fox, and that's gross to me, but let them do it.
Well, you've already had people in the Russian government flat out say that, they're citing stuff from Tucker Carlson, and trying to say that, what Tucker Carlson is saying is the way that the vast majority of Americans feel. And
right.
I'm going to tell you right now that even amongst, a lot of my friends and family who are, lean towards the right, and some of them very heavily so, don't believe that,
Right.
So that's the thing, is like, it's really tough because,
getting any American to be a communist is an impossible thing, especially with the America lovers that they gathered. Like, I get Trump tricked them to make America better, but those people aren't going to jump to communism as the answer to it. Never.
Oh, hell no.
Never.
Oh, hell no. They will never do that. And that's the, and that's the irony of it is you have Putin, who's literally saying that he's trying to denazify Ukraine.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Who's led by a fucking Jew.
Right, from Russia. He's a TV personality from Russia that went to Ukraine.
I think he's Ukrainian, but he got famous in Russia. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think he was born in Russia, but he went to Ukraine. I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of stuff, but that's the amazing thing is they know he's not a Nazi. They've known him. It's like saying Bob Saget was like a racist. We know Bob Saget. He's been in our lives forever. So, and Vladimir Zelensky is like the closest thing to a superhero we have on the planet right now, and he wants to meet. I don't, all right. I'll wait.
Nope. He was Zelensky was born in, let's see here. I am going to butcher this. Kryvyi Rih, Ukrainian SSR.
Okay.
So he was born in Ukraine, in Ukrainian territory.
But when it was controlled by Russia,
when it was part of the Soviet Union,
that's still cool.
That's a lot of that's a lot. That's going to be a lot of it, though. So like he's very much he's Ukrainian through and through.
Well, that's the point. It's kind of like America and Texas, Russia and Ukraine. Like it's a form of Russia. Like Russians are living in Ukraine, right? Russian-speaking former Russians are living and working in Ukraine. Ukrainians live in Russia. It's right there to where the border is so porous to where anybody can go. And that's a real weird thing. I heard like the soldiers, a Russian soldier actually said, I didn't know I was coming to kill Ukrainians. These are my brothers,
Yep. And that's I think the reality is that you have, a lot of the Slavic countries view themselves as brothers through and through. I mean, you look at, Moscow. Moscow comes from the Kievan Rus.
Right.
Because you had, the Kievan Rus were, a tribe that eventually would settle within, the northern regions and, would found what would be modern Russia.
Right. Kiev was Russia's, what is that, capital, right? For a long time?
No.
When it was an empire, I thought it was.
No, that was always St. Petersburg.
Okay.
But I mean, by going back, I mean, a lot, I want to say even like into like the 800s or 900s, a lot of what would become Russia, the people there were based out of Ukraine and Kiev. So, a lot of the Slavic countries are, well, there's a lot of them that owe some lineage to keep, their foundations with Kiev, and that's really what it boils down to. Is it's like they are very much related. They are very much brothers. And I want to say, between, like, if I remember correctly, something like between Belarusian and Russian and Ukraine, like there's it's kind of like the Scandinavian languages. They're mutually intelligible,
right?
But there are some significant differences between them, and so, like, I want to say, Belarusian and Russian, and there's like a 90% similarity, and Ukrainian and Russian there's like 84% similarity or something like that. So it's like mutually intelligible, like they can understand each other.
Right.
But, like, given that they were part of the USSR for a long time, all those countries, they all spoke Russian because of their Russian language programs.
Okay.
And that, I think, has a lot more to do with Brezhnev than anything, because Stalin wanted people to, Stalin was Georgian, and so that was one of those things where it's like, okay, whatever. Nikita Khrushchev, he wanted greater literacy, and he made huge steps towards doing that. But he wanted people to be fluent in their languages and Russian. So Russian was very much on the table for a lot of them. But then during the Brezhnev era, if I remember correctly, the language program became, that Russian was, your primary language, and all other languages were treated as a foreign language. So even if you were Ukrainian, you had to learn Russian primary, and Ukrainian was taught like once a week as a foreign language, even though you're literally Ukrainian.
Right.
And so that's something that's really interesting, because of how those countries were integrated, and how they learned to be able to work with each other despite having a number of different ethnicities.
Right. I just think Ukraine was a great neutral zone for that. It was a great melding pot for ideas that way. I mean, if you could form a hybrid of communism and democracy and socialism and capitalism all in one place, that's a breeding ground, like Hong Kong, like Taiwan. These are places, the Philippines, that, it's on the table. Which one do you want? It's right there, like it is in America right now. Like you don't see the choice in Canada being communism or what we have. It's just not a debate there. In England, it was during Brexit a point of debate, and countries get to make their choices, and the people get to make their choices. If 51% of Ukraine wants Russia, then I say you push for it, but you can't force it,
And that's, and we've had that conversation before. And I want to say, the UN ambassador to Kenya actually made this point where he's like, empires drew lines on maps, and, ethnically we have brothers across borders, and there is a great desire to be able to have, to reunite with your brothers and be a part of that society that is, you, but you cannot force that. And this is one of those things where I really do think that, on the world stage, we need to open up a greater ability for countries to realign their borders the way that they want to, and reach agreements, and not have these, straight up, wars and fallouts and all this other stuff. And that, these countries should be able to diplomatically redesign their borders. Taking pieces of land by force is very much, as he said, it's very much a piece of the colonial and empire era that needs to go away.
Right.
We're far more advanced and more civilized than we were in those days. There is no reason why we can't sit down, discuss, and actually agree without guns pointed at people, and let them figure out who they want to be a part of. And that's the tough part is that, this idea of territorial integrity and the desire to be a part of, who you want to be a part of is something that's always going to play at odds with each other.
Agreed.
But I think that's where in America, we don't exactly have that issue, because in America, I would say, heavily based on ideals. And I've even said to some extent, that states should be able to realign and redraw their maps based on shared political ideas. Let's be real honest. Eastern Washington and Western Washington, two very different political ideal systems.
Oh, sure.
Very, very different. And I do sympathize with people in Eastern Washington who are like, why the fuck are we paying for things that we don't ever get to use? Why are we the ones that are, beholden to, Seattle? I get it. I really do. And I think Seattle and Portland have more in common with each other than Seattle and Spokane.
Sure.
And I think that's the same case in Oregon as well, with Western Oregon and Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, it's the same in Texas, California, Florida. We're all divided.
Northern California versus versus the South, the southern part of California.
Northern Texas is super liberal, dude. Austin, super liberal, but you go just 100 miles towards Dallas or Houston, super conservative.
Right. And I think that's one of those things where, when we set up all of these lines on the map, we did so in a way that, at the time it made sense-ish. And maybe that's one of the greater discussions that needs to be held, is, how do we as not just a country but as a world sit down and have discussions, very important discussions about, the right to affiliate with who you want. And I think this is where people who advocate for open borders, might be well ahead of that step. It's like, I can understand where and why they want to do that, but at the same time, I can also understand that, from a current political stance, open borders don't make sense. Now, this is a huge if we were to allow ourselves the freedom of association and not have the government get involved in everything, being the libertarian that I am, I really do think that open borders could work.
I do too.
Because the answer there is it's like, look, you come over, as long as you are doing the things that are productive, you can stay here.
Yep.
Make it easy to get you a green card to work. We got, here in the country, we got plenty of jobs that need to be filled.
Yeah. And Mexico has plenty of room to grow.
Absolutely.
It's the border that holds all of that up, and that we spend billions of dollars on a year, that we just don't have to. If we spent that, I'm sorry, my border rant. If we spent that money on infrastructure at the border, there wouldn't be a border. There'd be this sort of neutral zone where people phase in and out. I know a lot of Mexicans that live in Mexico City would move to a border city if they could just walk 2 blocks into America and work at a factory, and then go back and live in Mexico and have a summer home with their parents further in.
And the reality is that, if Americans would learn to be comfortable with the idea that people who work here pay taxes here.
Yeah.
And so, they don't, they're citizens of another country. They don't get the benefits of being a citizen of our country.
Right. But
they get the benefits of having a job here, but they have to pay our taxes. That's the reality.
Right.
And we need that. We really do need that, and especially when you look at the shape of world connections as it is right now, if you want America to be a decent manufacturing hub, you're going to have to look at whether or not you can have workers from Mexico or from Canada be able to come in across the border easily, have their green card to work here, but be able to go back home and get back into the country.
Agreed.
And that's the reality is that I think that there is a very viable way to do this. I think there's a very viable way to turn areas of our country into manufacturing hubs, where people will live on border towns, come across the border to come to work, pay taxes in this country based on their wages, and then they'll go back to their country.
Yeah, the same here, by the way. Poor people will migrate to border towns to work at places in Mexico that are just being built. I don't know. That's
and
that's
here's
the way
the
I
reality.
see it.
And here's the reality is that you'll have shopping centers that spring up inside on our side of the border. They're going to buy stuff to take back home. They're
Right.
going to be spending the money that they make by and large here, with a good significant chunk of it coming back, going back to their place, but they're going to also be buying products from our country. So the money that they're spending, yeah, sure, some of it is definitely going to go home to their local economy, but a vast majority of it's going to end up being spent on ours.
Or it's going to go into one of the government's federal funds that protects both countries. Like, you know what I mean? From foreign invaders. It just, because somebody was saying Mexican, that's not a nationality. It's a country. You have to take people back to where the province that they grew up in, the area, the land that they grew up on. And that's not necessarily divided by a Mexican-American border. Some of them are from California, but their families are from places in Mexico, provinces, areas. So yeah, just getting past that and letting people, a person doesn't see a border, right? They just go to work. If they're on the border of Texas and Mexico, they're just coming here for work, like as a nurse or a factory worker. They don't see the border. Groups of people, it's us that we're like, oh no, and the government doesn't care. They're just like, we want our revenue. Like, we want the revenue on our side. So a border is only economic. It isn't personal. It isn't political. It's something to waste money on, and you can see that in Ukraine and Russia, by the way, because their border was so porous. The people were just people, Public Access America.
It's always funny because, especially because as libertarians, we get a ton of shit, even amongst other libertarians.
I think political philosophy is a lot like religion, and where there's moments you have to go on faith and trust what somebody else is saying.
The main focus is just less dependence on the government, because, well, we've seen how that's gone.
And you don't have to do that if you think about it in a human way.
More dependence on connections with each other.
You can always bring it back to what would one human do for another? What would 100 do for 100?
People looking out for people.
Find Public Access America anywhere you find your favorite podcast every Sunday and Thursday. And join the chat on YouTube at Public Access America every Sunday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Communities looking out for community.
Public Access America. History in the making, making history in the making, in the making, in the making, in the making, in the making.
And that's just it, is that, I guarantee you that, in Russia, there are places where they need Ukrainian workers, and in Ukraine, vice versa, they need Russian workers. And the reality is that what this is going to end up doing is causing a lot of animosity between two countries that really were brothers in so many aspects. And it's, it's really unfortunate. And I want to say this, there were a couple of countries, Finland and Sweden, that, they were on the fence about NATO. They were like, I could see where it'd be important. I could see where it's not. Based on what Russia has done, they have done a better job of selling NATO than NATO could sell NATO. NATO was more like a drinking club for the longest time.
Right. They almost had it as fractured as it could be. It was almost disbanded. It was almost unnecessary.
Right. And unfortunately, the actions of Putin and the Russian government have shown that apparently it's still a necessity. And that's unfortunate because, even in the US, we had NATO, but we were still pushing for Europe to be able to defend itself, not have us get involved. Europe is advanced enough that they can fight their own battles.
Well, you know what I know about Germany. They're really hesitant to militarize for good reason, right? And we can see why. But they've just agreed to start advancing their military technologies and defense. So once I think we have always been trying to train Germany to take that stage in Europe, and Angela Merkel did that really well. But now
Angela Merkel did that,
but everybody sees the need to defend themselves against Russia now, especially the countries not in NATO, like bordering Russia. Yeah, I never even thought about Sweden and Finland being affected by Russia the way they are, majorly.
Well, Finland is now pushing. There's been a civilian petition to join NATO now because of this. Finland didn't necessarily want this. They just wanted to be able to do their own thing, and I respect that. Sweden has wanted to maintain neutrality.
Yeah,
and I can understand why countries like Finland and Sweden wanted to maintain neutrality. It's
totally.
There's something viable and important about saying, no, you guys deal with your own shit. We're here doing our own thing.
Right. But we have a border, and they border closer to urban areas in Moscow, don't they? I mean, they're closer to Moscow than
St. Petersburg.
So they also have a porous border where people go in and out. And Russia did try taking over Finland, and Finland did not have any of that.
I mean, Finland did end up having to give up some of their land during the Second World War, but because Finland used to expand further to the east. But now it's but now you're looking at an issue where Finland's like, shit, what are we going to do about this? Like,
there's a big bully. We got to join a gang to get away from the big bully.
And that's just it.
I'm going to ask you just to if you have a message for Ukraine, and then because we're towards the end, and I want to make sure we get some information to Russians to let them know what's going on, and then a little support of Ukraine. And I'm going to let you do that, and then come back and have mine, and then we'll move into the second hour.
Yeah. So my message for the Ukrainian people listening is that I really hope very, very soon that you will be able to return to peace. You'll be able to put the pieces of your lives back together as much as you can. And I am absolutely amazed and proud of how you have defended your homeland. There is, this is something that, as an American, we kind of grow up with this idea that, we're always going to be prepared to defend our home, but seeing how you have kept the fight to your homeland as much as possible is absolutely amazing. And my hope for you all is that you have your national heroes. Zelensky has proven himself to be an incredible leader. And I do firmly hope that, his words still maintain the relevance that they did when he was inaugurated in 2019, that, you don't put pictures up of Zelensky, put pictures up of your family and make your decisions based on that. And what I hope for you as a people is that when you rebuild, you will rebuild back stronger, better, with a greater national unity, knowing that you fought for each other, despite what differences you may have had before in the political realm. You fought as Ukrainians, not as whatever party you have chosen to represent your worldview on. And that is my hope is that when your world returns to as normal as it can be, that you remember, as Ukrainians, you are all brothers first, and you don't let politics divide you.
We'll be there. I mean, the world will be there to help you rebuild. It's so to Russia, what I want to say to Russians is what I pretty much said all hour. Vladimir Putin is the reason that your country is as decrepit as it is, because he's been siphoning out the resources that should go to the progress that you've suffered for. Like, you don't live the richest lives. You live in mediocrity to serve the glory of your government. And that glory isn't being given back to you in the form of prosperity. He has a $1 trillion house, $1 billion house. He has a $1.5 trillion in assets hidden around the world. That's yours. That's your glory. That's not Vladimir Putin's glory. So communism could work. It could work. You're in a great country. You have an honorable country. You have one man that is totally an issue. And it's not because of his stand on communism, he can defend that to his dying day. He's stealing from you. And that's the issue. That's why you're failing. And that's why he's invading another country. And to Ukraine, I want to say Volodimir Zelensky is on the map as one of my heroes now. If he was to die in some way, the world would scream in horror and pain, and I can't imagine what would happen. So I don't think it's a wise move to kill him. You'll make him an idol, just like we worry about terrorists. So Vladimir Putin has to worry about what he does to this man, because he's basically a saint. He's a superhero. We don't have Iron Man right now. We have Volodymyr Zelensky. And Ukrainians as people, I think you showed America, the privileged, entitled portion of America that wanted to play insurrection, what insurrection really looks like. And you are showing us an example of heroism that we don't have in this country. We haven't had since 9/11, and I think this is bringing America together in a way that I don't think Vladimir Putin ever intended. So thank you for your example. That guy stopping a tank. I got to tell you, Jeffrey, it sounds stupid. Doing the right thing at the right time sometimes means kneeling in front of a tank. And as much as I don't have the right to say it, I feel like it would be something I would do. I would rather die because of the oppression than have to live under it. And I think I would go in front of a tank. Of course, if I was in a car, half of my car would have gotten crushed. What the fuck?
Right. And my message to the Russian people is that you are a very strong and proud people, and you have every reason to be strong and proud of yourselves. I know that right now it might feel like the world is just absolutely shitting on you, but I need you to understand it's your government, not you, the regular everyday people.
Right.
Most, all of us regular everyday people understand that war is an atrocity and there is no place for it in modern society, period, end of story. There's always the need to be prepared to defend yourselves, but there's very rarely ever an occasion where you need to be on the offensive. And I believe that there are a lot of you out there that recognize that, if not half, maybe more. And my hope is that when this all finishes and everybody's borders are respected, that you too get to rebuild your government in a way that is more beneficial to the people of Russia, not the people who have the money in Russia. I do believe that you have every reason to keep pursuing so many different things that you've been pursuing, and that you can be a much greater nation, but that you have been taken advantage of by your politicians. And that's unfortunate. And I sympathize with you on that. Be strong, and just remember that, there are other ways that you can make your government a government of the Russian people and have them be the ones that are not dictating wars in foreign lands. And I hope that you get to see that peace one day soon.
Yeah. I hope they get to see the evidence that proves that nobody pushed Russia into this war. You know what I mean? So thank you for listening to Public Access America. We will be right back right after this song.
To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. This is our moment. This is our time. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. Yes, we can. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we prove once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals, democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbow. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, nobody is going to hit as hard as life.
Ask not.
Yes, we can.
What your country can do for you.
I have a dream
ask what you can do for your country.
My poor little children.
Yes, we can.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
That's how winning is done.
Welcome to Public Access America.
Yes, we can.
Sunday live streams on YouTube.
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad.
On Twitter.
What?
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Smart Radio Public, and Spotify.
Yes, we can.
Public Access America. History in the making. Making history in the making.
For too long, we've lived in a world of canceled and delayed. No more. Those plans you've been making, they're on. Thanks to OnGo, the #1 ranked at-home rapid COVID-19 test. So that vacation where you get to swim with the pigs, it's on. Your friend's wedding that was pushed back 4 times, it's on. The roar of the stadium, it's on too. OnGo, COVID-19 test results in minutes. OnGo is available at letsongo.com/radio and Amazon. This product has been authorized by the FDA during the public health emergency only, and only for the detection of proteins from SARS-CoV-2, not other viruses. The claim #1 ranked is supported by ECRI's usability evaluation conducted in December 2021.